Oh, hello there. Welcome back to another Full Grown and Wild. And today, we're joined with our two usual suspects, Condog
Howdy.
and Old Daddywood.
It's me. I'm right here.
And today we got a really special guest here. Who are you, buddy?
Hi, you can just call me Plano.
This is Plano,
Hey, Plano.
Hey, Plano.
and he's here to answer some questions we have about flat earthers.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
That's all we
For sure,
ask.
brother.
So, just to get this out of the way, do you think the Earth is do you think the Earth is completely flat or what?
Completely. Absolutely. Yeah, 100% flat. There's no part of it that's not flat.
All right, cool,
I,
cool.
I do live on a hill, but I do get what you're saying.
All right, all right.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to come to this conclusion.
I led up to it with heavy research into anarchy. So I was already, well prepared to question the conventional narrative, the mainstream narrative. When it came to things like the government's legitimacy or the history of the government or the history of America. So when I started looking into science, I still looked into science also, but I was more political for a long time.
Right.
I shifted to science, a little bit before I got into flat Earth explicitly. Just in the months leading up, I remember researching why how the Earth forms, like how continents forms, and how the history, the deep history of time of the Earth. So I was already interested in the Earth a little bit before flat Earth, but it was 2015, late 2015. I heard someone say it on a podcast,
Okay.
and it was unexpected, because the podcast had nothing to do with it.
Right.
It was a podcast I was listening to for comedy, and they just I guess that since they were in New York, they just happened to have access to this guest who was a flat earther. And it took me, after I heard it, I spent the next, I just immediately said, I've got to prove this guy wrong. There's no way this guy can be right. Of course, I could prove him wrong because I knew my own abilities. I could probably prove him wrong with math. I'm good enough at math. I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I was confident I could use math to prove him wrong. And then, you look into it. I looked into it. I tried to do it, and you find out you really can't prove him wrong.
In what ways, in what ways were you not able to prove him wrong with like the
Hmm.
legitimacies of it being round or the fact of maybe there's a you know what I'm saying, like what led you to that conclusion?
Yeah. I mean, it was curvature first because the two main things are obviously the motion of Earth and the curvature of Earth. But the curvature of Earth was the one thing I thought I could do and quickly prove. So I went back to the history. Obviously, this was done in the 1700s by Maupertuis and Condamine,
Right.
and we don't need to go through this again because they were measuring the longitudes. And back then they thought it was Cassini. Where there was I don't know, there was like a debate between whether or not it's oblate or prolate. Is it flat at the poles or flat at the equator?
Right.
But they still thought it was a globe. Obviously, they just needed to know how much was it curved. Was it more curved here or more curved there? So that's what I found out about the history. The history was they were measuring essentially valleys and rivers, riverbanks with light signals. There's no mystery about it. It's just light signals, and you go as
Right.
far away from the person as you can. It's old fashioned surveying. So then what is surveying about? We find out surveying is really about triangulation, and the way they do it, if we look it up, there's two big differences. It's surveying on the local small scale, and then there's surveying at the large scale, which they call geodetic. So we find out, so if we go back to really try and figure out how surveying is done, how far can we measure things at a distance, we figure out that the real surveying is done without assuming curvature of Earth. They only factor in Earth curvature with geodetic surveying, which factors in after a certain scale. You have to scale up to I forget how big.
Yes, it's
Okay.
specifically when you're surveying, you're only using like a fraction of what an actual continent size would be when trying to estimate out sizes. So
Yes.
one of the questions that I have, I know, and I read about this. I know that a lot of flat earthers, they believe that space is particularly a projection. Is that something that you believe in? Like, do you believe that there are other stars into the sky?
It's not, I don't know about the projection part, but I do think the stars are close to us. It's not like this infinite realm of outer space.
So do you
they're probably
think that
all very close, because trying to determine the distance to a star is very hard. Or the mass and the distance to stars cannot be verified.
Yeah, because of how magnificent, how big the numbers are that you're messing with. So
there's a lot of I think there's assumptions that they make, and the way you make the assumptions make a big difference.
So then, do you recognize that there are other planets in the solar system?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
Those are not made of rocks. The word planets just means errant motion. Because when they were calling planets, they were like, well, those things don't move like stars, so we can't just call them stars. But they are just like stars in that they're made of light. Okay, so stars and planets are made of light. They're not made of rocks or even gas. They're not even made of gas, like like some, like the sun too. Some people want to say the sun is made of gas or whatever.
Do you believe that is it
and the moon too? I'll just add the moon too. The moon's probably not made of rock either.
Do you believe that Earth itself is the center of the universe then, or do you still believe that we revolve around the sun as a source of like a gravitational pull? Do you believe in gravity at this point?
That was a lot of questions. Well, the universe thing is weird because really the sun is not the universe. So our solar system is not the universe.
Correct.
Okay, so let's just make that big difference right there. Whatever you think the universe is not what we see locally.
Sure. My question specifically is, do you think that the planet as a disk, does it or is it as like a sheet, or what is the actual projection of the mass that we live on look like?
Well, it's a plane. I mean, don't use the word planet. Use the word plane.
Okay. So does it stretch infinitely both ways, or does it wrap around at some point?
Well, there's no way to know that. Really, if the world is infinite or finite, that would be great to know. Because that's just like the universe. Is the universe finite or infinite?
So, like, one of the questions, one of the
wait, just real quick, what do you think about the universe? Is it finite or infinite?
Well, the way that I understand it is that it's constantly expanding at this point, so it doesn't have a definitive number that you could point to as far as the space that's available inside of it. I think that you can get a rough estimation of the things that are inside of it if you can observe it. But I don't think that we have the tools or the capacity to really do that kind of thing right now. But back to specifically the Earth itself, one of the rebuttals that comes up a lot in the science is about orbit specifically. And if you start on one part of the map, you can fly all the way, quote unquote, across the map and reach that same destination point eventually. Or you could do it by plane, by train, by boat.
Well, that's are you
as long as
saying
you
on the
have
globe? Are you saying on the globe you can do that?
I'm saying on the surface that we experience as the ground. If we fly, swim, or walk across it, eventually we can come back to the exact same point that we
That's
were
false.
originally.
You're okay. That's a false statement. That's not true.
How is that a false statement?
If you walk south in the southern direction, you will not come back to where you started.
Eventually you will, yes.
No, I'm sorry. You think it's a globe and you think you will curve back around, but you don't curve back around. You just keep going south.
So is the Earth...
There's no curving back around.
So is the Earth, the plane, infinite to you? Or do we have an edge that we keep going?
No, I just said earlier, I don't know if it's finite or infinite. That'd be great to know. It's like the universe. So, how do we know what the edge of the universe is?
One thing that can be proven, if you think about it, is you can fly or take a boat from California to Japan, and then from Japan to China, and then walk all the way across China to Europe, and then from Europe you can fly again back over to America.
I don't disagree with that case. That is a case that you can be successful in.
Okay.
The case I described is where you will fail.
Do you have a specific map that shows that possibility without the globe being flat or without the plane being a sphere?
Do you need a map? Is that what you want?
Not specifically. I don't necessarily need a map. I just need to understand why the information, the science that has been given up to this point is doesn't work with what you have learned about the world being flat.
Science. Well, a lot of science is still valid, right? So it's not all of science. It's just astrophysics mostly, and of course the geo-earth science that uses that type of modeling. But what kind of science are you thinking of?
Well, generally, I believe in like a heliocentric model where our planet, our specific realm that we live on, revolves around an energy source suspended in space. The seasons that we have, the
data is your seasons. That's the data.
Well, not only that, it's a culmination of different pieces of information that we use. It's seasons, the trajectory of the sun that we can see observed in the sky.
Because what I will say is, generally what I will say is, whatever data you bring to me, you're making on a flat Earth. So I will say it does work on a flat Earth. You won't be able to bring me something that you've observed that won't work on a flat Earth.
Okay, then let's go back to the question: does the universe revolve around the planet, or does the planet, or not the planet, the plane?
Yeah, again, it's the universe. See, what we see are the stars, the sun, and the moon. Exactly. So if you want to call that the universe, you can call that the universe. But Some people just called it the galaxy or the solar system or whatever. For a long time, they just thought that's the whole world, is whatever you see in the sky and, on Earth. You call that the universe, though? Is that how you want to think of it? Because it's not someplace you could go. I don't know the depth of the sky, if that's what you're asking.
No, what I'm asking is, do you believe that the plane that we exist on revolves around something else, or does everything centralize on us?
Yeah, no, the ground is not moving. It's the sky that's moving.
Okay.
And as far as we know, it's revolving around the North Pole. So if you go far enough away from the North Pole, you might not see the sun, the moon, or the stars anymore.
Well, that would be true, but there are circumstances where if you're standing at the North Pole for extended periods of time, months at a time, you are not able to see the sun.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is what you're calling the universe, what I'll also call the galaxy or the world or our local solar system, is a system that is local enough that you can get far enough away from it and you won't see the stars and you won't see the sun or the moon, and you'll probably be on another continent. See, this is the big thing. There's more land than what we think of. We think of the continents that we learned of. There's more continents. We don't even think about it. There's more continents, more ocean, more land. It's just all because it could be an infinite plane. We don't know, but it's probably bigger. It's at least a bigger plane than the continents we know of.
So in a sense, it's almost like a bigger real game of Minecraft, where if you just keep walking, you'll just keep walking. And find
well, that's funny you say that because I took a screenshot of someone doing a Minecraft explanation, and they can't really give a good artist representation of the edge.
Right.
There is no good explanation. I'm telling you, there's no good explanation for what a finite or an infinite Earth is. Either explanation is really trippy to think of.
Okay, so sorry to interrupt, but could you look up to see if anyone's took a plane from one point and just drove north or south in either direction and came back to that same spot? Is there any data or anyone that's did flew or something like that? I mean,
yes. People have the circumnavigation always goes east to west. It never goes north to south.
Okay, that is interesting.
Yeah, that's a big clue, because when you want to circumnavigate, and they've given someone credit circumnavigating north to south, but he just went straight down, turned around, and came back. He didn't go all the way around in one direction.
So he ends up coming back. So what you're saying is that he gets to one point and turns back rather than just going that one
in
point,
Antarctica,
wrapping all the way around.
Yes. Crossing Antarctica is always lied about. They say they cross Antarctica, but they don't. They just cross the edge of it. They just kind of do a little U-turn around the edge. They don't cross a continent. That's not what's happening.
So then what would be the reasoning to not tell us about that information? Why would they go from one model of science to struggling to get into the new model of science just to keep this piece of information hidden from people?
Yes, Beast. Well, that's interesting. That's a good way you framed it. You're groping at some reasoning here. So there is a reason. It's obviously not dumb luck. Some people want to think maybe they were just made mistakes and they got embarrassed and they don't want to correct their mistakes. That's not it. No, they knew what they were doing from the beginning. They were deceiving everyone. Okay.
And then, okay.
So why? Why the big deception? What could this accomplish at all? Really, the short answer is atheism. That's the short answer. Just turning everyone into a, just someone who kind of lives without much meaning in life. Really, that's the short answer.
So do you think they're also deceiving us on the moon landing or the whole Mars rover robot thing landing there? Do you think that's all kind of a made up deal? Or
Yep. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why?
It's interesting. They could accomplish it with such rudimentary cinema tools, at their disposal, because Stanley Kubrick had only achieved something that was semi-realistic a few years earlier. So
Right.
they were really jumping on that technology train. They really want to utilize technology to fool people, to deceive people. Yeah.
That is kind of interesting. So this is kind of just like a weird, haha point I'm just kind of thinking of. So what if, say they are going to end up finding a way to colonize us on Mars? Well, maybe in your theory, maybe they're just taking a ship, driving real fast or whatever, endless side of Earth or whatever this is we're on, and they're going to call that Mars because we've never seen that land before.
And there's probably people that are already leaving, wealthy people that may not be dying. They may just be leaving and going to these places.
What do you mean?
That's kind of an interesting concept.
What do you mean by not dying?
Faking their death, because they don't want to be in the spotlight. They don't want to have a job anymore, and they don't want to have to do anything. So they want to retire. And the best way to retire is to fake your death. That's how you really retire.
So
yeah,
recently, like, who was it that died? That was really old. Larry King, right? The old talk show host.
Larry King.
So he was very old. So you don't think he died from old age? You think he was just like, fuck it, I want to retire?
No, yeah, he was kind of old. Yeah, no, I'm thinking of people that are probably younger, that could still enjoy their wealth. But yeah, I see what you're
Tupac
thinking,
or something like that.
Yeah, but I see what you're thinking. People that do have been compromised and have sold some, have some sort of access to crazy amounts of wealth. So maybe Larry King isn't really the right level of wealth to be thinking.
Right. So you said that they're trying to turn us into atheists. Is that?
That's the shorthand. The shorthand was.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, was the atheism and meaninglessness. Those were the two.
Is this an operation done specifically from like a satanic place? Is this centralized by a specific organization or entity?
Right. I mean, it is as much as it can be. I mean, there must be different families and lineages that are ultimately to blame, but yeah, it's centered around Rome, and before that, Babylon.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the most modern incarnations are, the American military, the CIA. But yeah, Rome is kind of that main historical arc that you have to be aware of. And the Roman, obviously, the Roman Catholic Church through Christendom up until modern Europe was formed. But then once American and French revolutions happened, they were ready to reset the stage for a modern global, rigged system of global governance, taking power away from, old monarchs.
So did they do that specifically through like the Catholic Church, or?
Well, I mean, the Catholic Church didn't have an army, so they obviously are using the militaries of countries. So they're sort of leveraging espionage to leverage different governments. That's how the Catholic Church, they use espionage. They're the ones that invented espionage. The CIA, this is a quote from G. Gordon Liddy, is the Jesuits formed the greatest intelligence organization in the world. They always have. And G. Gordon Liddy worked for the CIA. So he's saying the CIA is just another incarnation of the Jesuits.
And what is the Jesuits?
They're the order of the Catholic Church formed in the 1500s to really be the gung-ho,
they're like
shock troops.
They proclaim themselves as like the writers of Jesus, or like the proclaimers of Jesus, they were really, really like forceful about their religious
Yeah, oh,
values and
yeah.
stuff.
They went on all the missionaries. They started plantations in Southern America. They were in China. They were all over the world. I mean, they were like the most
like
gung ho.
when you think
There
of
was
like the Spaniard conquistadors, like their ideology started with the Jesuits.
Yeah.
perfect word. That's the perfect word, conquistador, because the guy that founded the Jesuits wanted to be a conquistador, but when he was in battle, he was hit by a cannonball. His leg was injured, so he couldn't be a soldier. He had to give up his dreams of being a conquistador. So then he goes and he starts the Jesuits to do it in a religious way instead.
So the people that are withholding the information that the Earth is flat and like all this other shit, they're doing this for religion?
They're
Ultimately, yeah, yes, because we think of the world as a secular place run by non-religious forces, but that's not really the case. The world is really run by more religious type forces. Secularism is just a tool of government.
Right.
It's and the sort of atheist governments are like what we think of as atheist or non-religious governments, religious dictatorships or whatever. It's just a modern form of like uh psychological manipulation because they want to give people the illusion of freedom, right? It's like they used to have slave masters. We don't have slave masters anymore, but we're still kind of slaves.
Right.
Yeah,
So then,
I kind of get. Sorry, Dalton, to interrupt you, but
Go
in
ahead.
a way earlier, if I'm kind of understanding right, is you think that if they give us the illusion that we have some kind of religion or some kind of expanding universe, that it kind of gives us more of a will to live or something to look forward to. Whether it's if we had none of that stuff, we would have no will to work or go on with what you know what I mean, be a bunch of lazy fucks.
Right. Right. I mean, the printing press was a pivotal moment because the Catholic Church knew they were doomed. They couldn't keep up with burning the books fast enough with how many were being printed. So they started sweating, and they had to come up with a new game plan to compete with printing presses.
So
That took a lot of work. That was the counter-revolution.
I'm not sure if you already like expressed like what their definitive goal is, but what do you think like they have to gain from making us all into this kind of livestock living conditions? Like what do you think they have to gain from us being like this? Not like a definitive answer, just like what you personally think they have to gain.
can anybody else hear anything?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Did you hear my question?
I did hear your question.
Oh, here. Did you hear my question, buddy?
I missed it.
All right. I asked like it doesn't have to be like I don't know if you already touched on this, and it doesn't have to be like textbook definitive. But what do you think they have to gain from us essentially becoming atheists? Or not becoming atheists, but having this will and shit. What do you think they have to gain?
Yeah, it's power. I mean, whatever it is that is life, whatever the source of life is super powerful. You can see it in children. Of course, anything that strives to live, you can see it in the thing as it's striving to continue on living. And so whatever that power is, they're trying to drain it of people. I think you can do it. You can just drain people of their life force somehow. And I guess, mostly that's done through the forms of money and labor, just raw labor. But now it's probably much more sinister than that because they need to have free will taken away. It's not just that you pay them. It's not just that you work for them. You also have to live a life that they want you to live. You can't just live your whole life in some way, in some free way. So yeah, a lot of culture I think is controlled and scripted, and people are living lives that are ultimately designed for them. And it's to squeeze them. I guess it's just to squeeze people of obviously money, labor, and then on a deeper level, some form of spiritual energy, life force energy.
So,
I do that does kind of get me a little, because I was thinking the other day, even if you own your own home, you cannot sit in that home forever if you don't pay that property taxes. It still becomes the government, even though you paid X amount of dollars for the home. If you don't pay a certain amount of property taxes, they're still going to take away your home.
right.
Yeah.
So are you saying people are getting drained in like a metaphorical stance, or do you think like people are like actually?
Yes. Yeah. No, yeah. It's the creativity and the innovativeness of society is not what it could be. There's not as much inventions happening and not as much creativity happening. What we have are production. Production is not necessarily, really creative human endeavors. It's just economic activity.
Right.
So that's what I'm thinking of, is the ultimate forms of human thriving and human flourishing have been reduced, right? That's what science does. Science is a reductionism activity. So everything is being reduced, and human life, or in life in general. So, I mean, life forms, right? There's not as many life forms as there used to be. It seems like every kind of life is being converted to machines or people. And people aren't really, I would read you a quote on television and how humans relate to it, but it's a little esoteric. But the point is, it's our relation, the relations to machines and how life is really not what it could be, right? It's so much weaker.
Right.
We're not. It's something like we're not even consumers. We're just part of an algorithm. We're just input and output.
Yeah, just a number.
And back to the innovation thing, I was reading a lot of things about Nikola Tesla, and a few of the things were that he found a way that we should never honestly have. We should always have renewable resources like free electric, or all that stuff. But that seemed to go away pretty quick after he passed. Um,
That
so
was
yeah,
like
I
in the
mean, there's
50s.
exactly, and like what they were
Yeah.
talking about with him was we should be so far well advanced in what we are right now, but because of the government and all that stuff, they're kind of kept us in a
I
bind, I
feel
guess, as
it.
far
I
as
really feel it.
technological
Yeah.
advancement.
Yeah.
I mean, those are good cases, because there is legitimate inventions that are under secret, under national security laws.
So I know this might just be a stupid question, but like, what if all the sciences and like the evidence that you have found that the Earth is flat, what if that was made to make you think a certain way? To, I don't know, like, I don't know how to describe it.
I think you're talking about the psyop. What if the flat Earth thing is a big hoax? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean like, what if like we both believe in different things, and what if like like what you're saying about like the Earth being round, how that is fake, how the Earth is actually flat? What if people put the information that, hey, the Earth is actually flat? Like they gave like some evidence about that, but what if that evidence was false on that part, just to either fuck with you guys or something?
Okay, well, I think what you're saying is, yeah, so what if all the flat Earth evidence is really sort of fabricated or fake in some way, right? All
Right.
of it? Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily all of it,
Not
but
all.
portions of it.
Yeah, like
Portions of it. Yeah, I mean, I think so, because I think the Flat Earth Society is a controlled opposition group formed by government agents. I think a lot of people on YouTube making Flat Earth content are government agents. I think a lot of people are paid by, I don't know who they're paid by, probably the CIA or the NSA, but in England, I think it's called J-Trig. uh, but yeah, these operations are obviously funded to do psychological, mass psychological manipulation. And yeah, Flat Earth, obviously, I think, yeah, they have a wing of whatever department does pop culture phenomenon control. Yeah, there is a group controlling flat Earth. There are government agents trying to infiltrate and trying to make them look stupid and not have good ideas and present stuff that it isn't actual real evidence. When people start researching, yeah, they'll come across it. They'll make them look stupid when they repeat some form of evidence, right? That's obviously bogus to their friends and family.
Right.
Well, that kind of leads up to a question I was going to ask you, was as far as the I do see a lot of these flat earth people, and they kind of sound crazy or almost let it sound dumb, but then we talk to someone like you seem pretty educated, intelligent, give a good argument, almost make me think, what the fuck, where the fuck am I? You know what I mean? So they do seem to make flat earthers seem really dumb. I mean, and I guess in a way, if we do, if all of us think the earth is round, and which, I still do, obviously, but it's still, someone like you can kind of make me think, because you don't look stupid, but then they put these other people on TV almost to shame them, basically, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, that was the Netflix documentary. It did that really well.
Oh yeah, you mentioned to me before this that you weren't in it, but you had the opportunity to be in a Netflix documentary about flat Earth.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the location of the shoot on the day of the taping, but I refused to sign the paperwork that said I allow you to use my interview on the documentary. So I don't want to be interviewed. I was not going to be interviewed. I made sure of that.
Right.
Because you could sniff it out. These people weren't gonna play fair and give like they weren't. It wasn't a real documentary. A real documentary, I guess, would have been fair and unbiased and more neutral.
Right.
Objective.
Yeah.
Well, there was kind of a funny part. And I pretty much turned it off immediately after I seen this scene. But it was a guy, and I think they were like in Seattle or something, if I remember right. But he's like, "I'll tell you why the Earth is flat." He goes, "I'm sitting here at the beach, 20 miles away from Seattle, and I can point over there west, and I can see Seattle. So why wouldn't it be flat?" And to me, I was like, right there, just tried to make everything look stupid just right from the beginning. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So at that point, I was like, yep, this is going to be weird, or, or a bunch of shit that don't make sense. So,
yeah, I think there's a lot of people that say, like Shaq, I think, was quoted saying something like that. They do get these quotes that are like that are just, someone sort of says like, yeah, of course it's flat, and then they say something that just it's not a real piece of evidence. But yeah, no, the real piece of evidence would have been to say how far away is the thing you're looking at, and how much of the curvature of Earth should be blocking the thing that you're trying to see. Because there is some number of, like, if the Earth is curved, if you go 20, 30, 40 miles away, how much of that 20-story building, 30-story building should be blocked,
visible.
Yeah, and at some point it'll be completely blocked.
So does that mean that is there curvature, or is it just perspective and the capability of our eyesight or a telescope's eyesight?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Because the classic example is for flat Earth researchers is to watch a boat disappear over the horizon, and then reach down to the ground, pick up your zoom camera, put it to your eye, and then zoom in on what you thought was disappeared over the horizon, over the curve. And you'll find out it wasn't over the curve. It's not over the curve yet. You can zoom back in on it. So how far away does it have to be to go over the curve? If you can zoom in on something, you're obviously looking at something not over the curve of the horizon.
So basically what you're saying, instead of a curvature, at some point, it's just the human eye only being able to see a certain range, basically.
Yeah, things disappear just like on any example. I mean, you can take examples of really flat surfaces. You can put a camera on the ground, and you could, have a perspective. There's lots of examples of photography that takes great examples of perspective with signposts or buildings or whatnot, and you can see how things vanish into a vanishing points. That's what it's called, right?
So does that and with those experiments, they I know that they show a lot of different like heights that they check it at. Like if they check it like at 6 feet from the ground, they can't actually see the object. But if they take it 30 feet into the air or 40 feet into the air, they can actually, with the same vision or the same magnitude of camera, they can actually spot the item again. So if you take an item so far out, does that mean you can just continuously go up and eventually see that object again?
That's a good question. So in theory, yes. So simply in theory, yes. But no, when you think of the air and the atmosphere. So if there was no air, yes. But the fact that there is air and stuff in the air means no, you can't see it. It actually blocks what you can see. It makes things fuzzy. So ultimately, things don't have the crisp outline to see it when it diffuses through the air, when the light starts refracting through the air, diffracting.
Okay. So then, but eventually at some point when you get so high, there is no disbursement from the atmosphere because there's no atmosphere left.
Well, then, yeah, and those are the best examples. The photos we have, the highest photos we have that I know of are 120,000, 130,000 feet. 20 miles, 25 miles, whatever it is. I don't think anything's made it above that. In the shots we have at that height of the horizon are pretty spectacular. You can see an amazing flat horizon. You have to obviously find stuff that doesn't have bad camera warp distortion.
Like the fisheye lenses and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess every camera's got something, but it is possible to take a photo of the horizon on a helium balloon.
Yeah.
Basically.
And that could just be like an illusion of a horizon or of a curvature simply because of the way that our eyes are shaped or the way that the camera lens is shaped. So, I mean, you can't really prove it that way specifically.
Well, okay, but there's the second point to that is when you rise up in altitude, the flat Earth and the globe Earth behave differently. The flat Earth horizon rises with your altitude. The globe Earth horizon doesn't rise the same way. It actually falls away from your eye level. So do you understand the difference? So that's the big difference. Is the horizon stays at eye level on a flat Earth, but with the globe Earth it drops as you go up in altitude.
Climb up, yeah.
Yeah. And that's not what you don't see. What we do see when you actually experiment with photography is the horizon is at the level of the camera, when it should be at an angle 10 or 15 degrees angle down from level. Or I don't know the actual degree, but you can figure this out. There are simulations that you can run. I've found a couple good websites where you can type in a certain altitude and it'll display a mathematically produced, obviously, curvature of the horizon. And it'll show you, it'll put the curvature further and further below a level line as you increase altitude. That's only on a simulation. That's not in real life. That's just on a computer screen.
Yeah, of course. Like a vacuum statement or like a vacuum situation.
Right, because if the Earth is a globe, if it is a sphere, it is so massively massive, there's still no curvature we've ever seen.
Yes.
So the curvature is going to have to be completely way bigger than anyone's ever completely conceived. And I don't think that's true. I think obviously it's level. There's no curvature we've ever seen. It's flat until otherwise,
Do you not believe that do you not believe that we've had objects put into orbit then around our plane?
No, there is no orbit. No such thing. Orbit is, is supposedly something falling over the curvature of the Earth at just the right distance and speed. That's not. There's no curvature of Earth, so that can't happen.
So then, specifically, where would I know this is probably one of the dumbest questions, but where would the moon and the sun go if there was no particular like curvature for them to hide under or hide behind? Is it like how is the sky that we see above us generated?
Interesting. Yes, interesting. Okay, so whatever those things are doing, you could call those orbits, but they're not massive bodies of matter. So the sun, the moon, and the stars, I don't think are made of matter like we think of. I think they're made of like they're made of light. I think they're just straight up made of light. I'm not even sure they're made of something we could say. But outer space itself, I'm not even sure is empty. The outer space, the black part of space, could be like a fluid substance, or like some sort of they used to call it
ethereal
ether back
material.
In the day.
Yeah, ethereal
there
material.
You go. Yeah. I'm sorry. What was the question? I think I missed the question.
I like specifically like what happens to the celestial bodies that are the sun and the moon when like a day or night cycle actually happens, if there's no curvature, like if there's no place for them to tuck behind.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So you're letting me off the hook a little. I don't have to explain how they stay suspended. I mean, they are suspended up there somehow. I mean, we don't have to go to that.
Yeah,
they do go far enough away.
Fall off the presumption with that. Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm saying is they do go far enough away where eventually they're past the horizon, and they're past the vanishing points of the horizon, and which is just the other side of the Earth. So when you're on when you're in the Americas,
mm-hmm.
and the sun is over you noonday,
mm-hmm.
The light cannot reach Asia and Africa because the sun is not high enough or big enough. Basically, it's just a smaller, closer sun, so it can't light up everything. And the moon is the same way. The moon isn't big enough to see from all over the Earth all at the same time. They're too close to the ground and too small.
Oh, I just had a. So, are you familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh? By any chance?
The original. Yeah, it's the original story of Western civilization.
Yeah, and in the portion of the story when he's actually trying to track down immortality, one of his tasks is to chase the tunnel of the sun before it actually
I don't
reaches.
Remember.
So, and one of the trials that he has to do, he has to find the tunnel that the sun sinks into each day.
Oh.
Run that whole tunnel overnight and then come out the other side before he gets burned. And he obviously fails to do so. But that's not the focus of the thing, why I bring it up. The main reason is do you think that there's something like that going on? Is there like a specific place?
No, let me try again.
Okay.
No, the sun, the stars, and the moon are in the sky, and they don't ever drop below a certain altitude. They just revolve in circles at that altitude. Now, technically, I'm going to say the sun does change altitude, and the moon, I'm not as clear on. So the sun, I'm going to say, actually is moving in a spiral helix, a bigger loop around these closer to the ground, and then a smaller radius as it corkscrews up towards the center. But yes, basically they are just moving in a circle from one side of the plane to the other, from the Americas side to the Asia, India's side.
And
just over at the same altitude.
And this has been scientifically proven, or theory?
Well, I mean, you could try and triangulate the position of the sun and the position of the moon, and you can get fairly close. I'm not sure how precise you can get, but yeah, you can try and determine the position of the sun and the moon. and you can say it's probably in the few 3,000 mile range,
Right.
not millions.
So.
And yeah, so I mean, whatever you need to know about where noon is and why noon can't shine over a bigger surface area of the sun, or sorry, of the Earth, has to do with how light propagates through the atmosphere, I guess, and the fact that the sun is really just illuminating gases. I guess like the way the atmosphere lights up is actually pretty fascinating. The way
Right.
daylight is, it's kind of amazing.
So this might be going back to like a topic earlier, but you mentioned how you think there's some people that are like planted into certain social groups that are part of the CIA or something, just to like.
Yeah, they're called controlled opposition.
Right,
Yeah.
controlled oppositions. Do you think we're one of them?
Or agents. No, I don't think so. You don't come off like that.
All right. Have you ever met
Joke's
someone?
on you. I've been a secret agent this whole time.
Wilson,
No.
take the shot.
No, they generally try to infiltrate, and then they make everyone look stupid at some point. That is what they do, right? They become a white
Like that's
supremacist, or they become a bigot of some kind, or they do some weird misogynist thing, or they make everyone look like assholes.
Right.
So when did you come to the conclusion entirely? Has this been like something that's been for a while, or has this been within the
Oh
past
yeah,
year,
yeah.
or
Oh, it's been like 5 years.
5? Okay. What really? You said that it was political that started you down that trail, and then you started following the science.
Well, no, technically I was just into science right before that. I was political like in the years leading up to it.
Okay.
But in the months right previous to it, I was actually just interested on earth science. So I was sort of primed for it. I was trying to figure out the history of deep time on Earth.
So.
But I would say I entertained the idea because I was used to questioning mainstream narratives.
Right.
From my anarchy stuff.
So, just like flat Earth, are there any other theories that you have on like the world and shit? Like.
Oh yeah, man. I mean, because once you get into it, you kind of say, okay, I can't stop here, right? You got to keep going. I mean,
Right.
There's so many lies to history. I mean, the way that here's a star forts. Have you heard the word star forts?
No.
It's there's a great website, starforts.org. There's cities, basically every major city like that has any history that's older than a few hundred years, or maybe just 150 years even, has a fort structure that is shaped like a star. It could have a 5 points, 6 points, 7 points, 8 points. It doesn't matter, but it was essentially like the center of whatever town, or the port of whatever town. Amsterdam's a good example. Also, Vatican City. Vatican City is
Yes, I
one.
was going to say. I know what you're talking about.
So it's a class. So okay, so this appears all throughout the world, and it's sort of connected with a theory of classical civilization architecture, like the Roman pillar type construction that we think of. Columns, the column type architecture. So yeah, so whatever civilization was dominant at the time of these star forts being built, and before that, star forts I think were more recent. Before that, the Greco-Roman architecture that we call Greco-Roman architecture, I think was all, one major world civilization. It was a high advanced civilization that had wireless energy. It had It probably had forms of transportation that were, not horses. And so, one example is like the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal is a masterpiece of engineering. It was so well constructed. I mean, it's like the pyramids or something. Like how many bricks they had to lay just to have this whole thing work out right. So I'm saying there is some level of high society, high civilization that has been suppressed. They suppress it so that they can steal the technology. Whoever they are is the ones that replace the ruling class with themselves. So the ruling class that used to rule the world may not have been psychopaths. I'm thinking there might have been a time where the world was kind of nice, kind of like Eden,
Yeah.
And how long ago would that have been specifically?
It could have been very recent. I mean, because the way a reset can happen is just within a few generations. It only takes a few generations to really forget your history. So, whatever we think of as these people that lived in star forts or the people that lived in Greco-Roman architecture, it was worldwide. This is the crazy part. I mean, and there's parts obviously of architecture and archaeology that are completely ruined away that we only have the very smallest traces of. And so we have no clue really of lots of human history. But the little bit I'm thinking that we need to look, sort of revise history on is definitely the Western history that we can try and recover from the archaeology we can do. There is some archaeology we can still do. It's not all lost to the dustbin of history.
Right.
I think specifically, going back to that theory, I've had thoughts like that specifically myself in what you see in the pyramids, the Sphinx. There's information now that says that it's over 12,000 years old. The pyramids could date even farther back than that, based on the erosion that they have experienced. They say that at some point in time, the area that the Sphinx is sitting on had severe flooding and rainfall for hundreds and hundreds of years. And obviously, that's not the case now. It's not the same situation that it's in now. So something has had to happen to the thing that we exist on, the plane or planet or whatever you believe that it is. Something's happened to it, and that entire society, whatever created the Sphinx, not necessarily there, but over in South America, there's several different pyramids that we're now uncovering that we thought were mountains. They're digging them up and finding crazy things with laser technology. So I think that I think you're right about that, and that there is a society that has been washed away for whatever reason and hidden away because of how powerfully advanced all of their technology really was.
Yeah, some people call it Tartaria, but I think it could have just been what we think of as Atlantis. It was just a worldwide advanced civilization.
Yeah, I think Atlantis is probably a good word to generalize it. I don't think that it's just one place, though. I think that their technology was expanded all across the existence that we know of now.
I mean, do you know the term mud flood?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's related to this too.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, here's one of the wildest theories is that we're living on the backs of giants, like literal
Turtles.
Animals and turtles. Yeah, no. The mountain. When you look at a mountain, that's actually a giant laying on its back, turned to rock.
Like the shits in God of War. Like, what are they called again?
Titans.
Yeah, Titans.
Yes, exactly. When you look at the coastlines of a lot of, when you look at the interesting topography of a lot of parts of Earth, that topography is just living beings turned to rock. Like, that's one of the wildest things I've heard.
I'll probably shit myself if a mountain started walking.
Just gets up, scratches its ass, and walks away.
Yeah, that would fuck with me mentally.
What movie was that in? Right? Isn't that like Tolkien or something?
Yeah, The Hobbit. It's in the Hobbit when they're trying to get to. They just left the Elven city, headed to the Lonely Mountain, and they see those giant titans fighting.
Yeah, and then the sort of related to that is a theory called no forests on flat Earth, which means the forests we think of, the trees we think of, are really a fraction of whatever used to be around for these beings. If there were giants and there were animals like that size of mountain ranges, then that means the trees were also equally as gigantic.
That big.
Yeah, so one of the ones is like Devil's Tower in is it Utah or Wyoming?
Yeah, or the Great Plateau. I don't know what it's called, but it's in Australia.
Is it Australia? Because I'm thinking of one in South America called Lorema. But yeah, exactly. It's like well, it's the same thing. It's a big plateau-sized tree trunk. It's like a tree trunk, right? But it's the size of a plateau.
It looks very suspiciously like a tree trunk.
Right. So that's the deepest time, right? And that's even before Atlantis time, right? That would be so far back. But some of the most recent stuff is that mud flood stuff. Like in the 1800s, these cities in America and probably Europe and England were populated with orphans. Trains and trains of orphans shipped into these cities that were vacant. Used to be populated by a society that was, high civilization society, but somehow was defeated and replaced. And when it was replaced, the cities were pretty much emptied out. And then suddenly we have a new batch of like orphaned people and people with no history and like a servant class to populate these cities with. So that could have happened in the mid 1800s. And the evidence for that is you go into these archives of like Paris or Berlin or London or something. They have like museum archives of these photos from those times that show people that just, I don't know, whatever these populations of people were at those times that filled these cities, they all looked like they were just shell-shocked and dressed the same way. And I mean, I guess you could explain it away. That's just how people looked back in the day. But then again, they don't look like regular populations of people. And they were definitely orphanages. I mean, this was the weird thing. Trains of orphans. Like, it's weird to think about. Generally, it's the people I follow are from England and America, but I'm guessing it was in Europe too.
Okay.
It may be Australia too, but I'm gonna have to follow up on that. It's just that's the most recent history of how do you account for what seems to be like the Gilded Age type mansions. The Biltmore Estate. Do you know the Biltmore Estate? Turn of the century stuff, 1900 type mansions, those type of buildings. But also the civic buildings too. So Texas. I'm from Texas. Texas has a lot of town courthouses. So those classic courthouses from 100 years ago. These types of buildings from just 150 years ago could have been built by a different civilization that was defeated and replaced, and all these buildings have been reoccupied somehow by a new civic order, a new governmental order that might have it's like Napoleon era. The Napoleon era could have been a very big reset all the way through the 1800s, and it's not clear to see. That's the interesting thing. It's not clear to me how much of modern urban history, the development of modern, as we think of it, cities, is replacing older cities that were already there and may not be a continuation of that same lineage of architectures and engineers that built those previous cities. Because I don't know if you know masonry. I mean, masonry has not continued like it used to. There's a very different change of architecture and engineering.
there's a definite change in the way that people have been building buildings
Yeah,
since like the 30s or 40s. It's gotten a lot cheaper. It's a lot quicker as far as operation. It
right.
seems more artificial. I don't know if that's necessarily
A
attributable
conspiracy. I mean,
to yeah,
yeah,
or if
but
it's just laziness of the modern people.
sure,
But
sure. Yeah,
there
that's the
there
fun
there is
part.
definite there's a definite noticeable change in architecture. I'll agree with you there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the classic ones are the cathedrals. Like, what are
Yes.
these cathedrals? What were they doing building cathedrals? Well, it's such a monumental effort. It had to have been the most important thing, and it's probably based on the resonant chambers of how sound echoes through the different parts of the cathedral.
And that there's a lot
On
of
top,
I know that there's a lot
go,
of
yeah.
conspiracies about like tonal architecture, like architecture made
Mhm.
specifically to emit specific sounds and things like that
Eh,
all throughout history.
yeah, yes, and some of these buildings with the spires on top, anything that comes to a point, may be collecting electricity from the atmosphere, from the static charge of the atmosphere. So that's how I'm saying some of these ancient technologies.
Oh, I think we lost him again.
Fuck.
Oh, hey, yeah, I'm back again. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Do you want to finish up what you were saying? Because we gotta wrap it up pretty soon.
Yeah, that was it. Just the atmospheric electricity is an interesting thread to follow.
Alrighty, cool. Well, it was really good to have you on, Plano. Oh, I'm sorry. Was someone about to say something?
Well, I was just gonna say, is there anything else you'd like to share with us on, maybe one last piece of anything you didn't get to share, or why
Yeah,
you
yeah,
think we should be flat earthers, or you know what I mean? What's your final
yeah.
piece in the say, my friend?
Yes, no. Research Jesuits. I mean, the Catholic Church is still in control. They've got power like you wouldn't believe, and the way they do it is largely through their Jesuit trained secular people, and then straight up Jesuit trained, Jesuit priests. If you either become a straight up Jesuit priest and control society, or you control society by allying yourself with the Catholic Church, probably going to a Jesuit college. So yeah, look into the Jesuits of the Catholic Church.
Jesuits. How do you spell that?
Jes,
JES.
yeah,
Go ahead.
UITS, Jesuits.
Jesuits. All right, I got it, my friend. Well, we appreciate you being on, brother.
Yeah,
Plano, thanks so
Thanks
much
for
for
that.
having a conversation with us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. You guys were a lot of fun.
Oh, no problem. Thank you all for watching Full Grown and Wild, and we'll be back with you again next week. See you then.
See you then, everybody.
Bye.
Full grown and wild.